Hello and welcome to the 27th edition of the GreenWave podcast by Synergy International. I'm SYNI, your host, and today's topic is sustainable tourism. Specifically, we're exploring the latest trends that promise to make travel more environmentally conscious. This is part 2 of our little series on sustainable tourism. Last week in part 1, we dove into the world of van life and questioned whether living out of a decked-out camper van is as eco-friendly as its reputation suggests. Spoiler, it's complicated. This week, we're zooming out to look at sustainable tourism on a broader scale. We'll discuss the global trends that are reshaping travel in the name of sustainability, examine if all these green ideas are making a dent in the tourism industry's environmental impact, and see what's being done about the not-so-sustainable side of mass tourism. Plus, we'll take a little tour of some of the world's most environmentally friendly resorts, from rustic eco-lodges to high-end retreats, and tackle a thorny question. Is eco-tourism becoming just another luxury good for the rich, or can it be accessible to everyone? So, grab your reusable coffee mug and settle in, because we're about to ride the green wave into the world of sustainable travel. To start, let's set the scene on why we're even talking about sustainable tourism. Many of us love to travel, to explore new places, experience different cultures, or just unwind on a nice beach far from home. But tourism, for all its personal and economic benefits, has a hefty environmental footprint. In fact, the global travel and tourism sector is responsible for roughly 8% of the world's carbon emissions. Yes, 8%. That's a serious footprint. If tourism were a country, it would rank among the top emitters. Think about all the jet fuel burned for flights, the electricity and water consumed by hotels, the waste generated by restaurants and cruise ships, and even the environmental strain on popular destinations overrun by crowds. It adds up quickly. For a long time, this side of tourism was largely overlooked. Out of sight, out of mind for travellers having a good time. But as climate change and environmental degradation have become impossible to ignore, both travellers and the industry are having a moment of reckoning about making tourism more sustainable. Essentially, how can we keep seeing the world without wrecking the world? One big trend is the push toward carbon neutral or even carbon negative travel. This is a response to the climate impact of tourism, especially from transportation like flying. Carbon-neutral travel means offsetting the emissions you can't avoid. For example, by investing in projects that reduce carbon elsewhere, like tree planting or renewable energy, to balance out your flight emissions. Carbon negative goes a step further. Actually, removing more carbon dioxide than you produce, effectively making your trip benefit the climate in net terms. It sounds a bit like magic. Leave for vacation, come back having made the planet cooler. It usually involves paying extra or choosing providers that offset generously. Many airlines now give you the option to buy carbon offsets when you book, and some travel companies automatically include offsets in their packages. It's a promising idea. Travellers can essentially donate to environmental projects to cancel out their footprint. However, offsets alone aren't a silver bullet. Some argue they're the climate equivalent of buying indulgences. You know, I polluted, but I paid for absolution, so all good. It's better than nothing, of course, but the emphasis is slowly shifting to actual carbon reduction. The trend towards ecotourism and nature-based travel experiences is also booming. People are craving a genuine connection with nature and a chance to support conservation while travelling. This isn't completely new. Ecotourism has been around for decades, but it's surging in popularity. We're talking about trips like visiting wildlife reserves, snorkeling in protected coral reefs, trekking through pristine forests with local guides, or birdwatching in remote wetlands. The key idea of ecotourism is that you travel to natural areas in a way that helps protect those areas and benefits local communities. Done right, your tourism dollars go into park fees or community projects, and you as a traveller learn a lot in the process. For example, you might stay at a jungle lodge in the Amazon that's owned by an indigenous community. You get an amazing nature experience, and your visit directly contributes to rainforest preservation and local livelihoods. Or perhaps you join a guided tour in Borneo, where part of the fee supports orangutan conservation. These kinds of experiences are increasingly sought after by travellers who want their trip to mean more than just selfies in front of monuments. Together with that, nature craving is something a bit more introspective: wellness travel and digital detox trips. In our hyper-connected, always-on world, the idea of taking a vacation to disconnect, literally from our devices, has huge appeal. There's a rise in retreats where you swap your smartphone for mindfulness meditation, yoga, or just quiet time in a beautiful setting. Picture a mountain lodge where Wi-Fi is only available for an hour a day, encouraging you to talk to fellow travellers or, gasp, read a book by the lake. Or a wellness resort that offers spa treatments, healthy locally sourced meals, and sunset yoga sessions, deliberately situated in a tranquil environment, far from city noise. The term digital detox gets thrown around a lot. And yes, some places will confiscate your phone for the duration of your stay, if you're up for it. Now, some might chuckle that we must pay money to do what previous generations did naturally. After all, there was a time when going on holiday meant people truly couldn't reach you. No email, no cell service. Imagine that. But in an age where many of us are glued to screens, this trend speaks to a real need. Next up in buzzwords, regenerative travel. If you haven't heard this one yet, get ready, because it's poised to be the new darling of sustainable tourism. The concept moves beyond leave no trace toward actively leaving places better than you found them. Imagine going on vacation and making a positive impact on the local environment or community as part of the experience. Regenerative travel experiences might involve volunteering or citizen science, like helping researchers conduct reef surveys, joining a beach cleanup, planting trees in a deforested area, or spending a few days working on an organic farm through a program like Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, known as WWWIF. It could also mean simply choosing travel providers that invest profits back into local conservation and community building projects. The idea is that your trip doesn't just avoid harm, but contributes to renewal. Another trend that has gained momentum is the pursuit of local, authentic experiences. This often aligns with sustainability because when you engage with local culture and businesses, your tourist dollars tend to stay in the community and support its people. Let's not forget the rise of the quietcation. Yes, that's a term now. As the name suggests, it's about finding peace and quiet on your holiday. Another particularly transformative trend, and a challenging one for the industry, is the idea of flight-free travel and the broader slow travel movement. We all know flying is usually the single biggest carbon contributor in a trip. Over the past few years, some travellers, especially in Europe, have been embracing trains, buses, bikes, anything but planes, to get around for their holidays. You might have heard of the term flygskam, a Swedish word meaning flight shame, which captures the guilt some folks feel about flying due to climate concerns. It sparked a wave of people opting for alternatives when feasible. So, with all these trends, the question is, are they making the tourism industry more environmentally conscious overall? And what's being done to tackle the persistent problem of unsustainable mass tourism, which is like the elephant in the room? There's no doubt the awareness and the options for sustainable travel have increased. 10 or 20 years ago, if you were an eco-conscious traveller, you really had to search hard for information, maybe digging through niche guidebooks or obscure web forums to find an eco-lodge or figure out how to volunteer abroad. Now, mainstream platforms are in on it. For example, one of the biggest online travel agencies has introduced a badge for travel sustainable stays, highlighting hotels that meet certain eco-criteria. As of this year, they've tagged hundreds of thousands of properties worldwide. That tells you that at least those hotels are taking some steps like reducing waste, saving water, using renewable energy, or supporting local communities. Major international organisations are also on the case. The United Nations World Tourism Organization, UNWTO, has been championing sustainable tourism principles globally, working with countries to develop policies that protect natural and cultural heritage while ensuring tourism benefits communities. They often remind us that tourism, if managed well, can support many of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, like providing SDG 8 for decent work, and SDG 12 for responsible consumption, and SDG 13 for climate action. We also have the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, GSTC, which is kind of like the guardian of standards. They have created a global standard for what it means to be a sustainable hotel or destination. They don't certify places directly, but they accredit other certification bodies. If you've ever heard of labels like Green Globe or EarthCheck, or a national eco-certification in some country, there are many, chances are they align with GSTC's criteria. This helps lend credibility, so travellers know a certified sustainable resort or tour is not just slapping a green label on for fun. It actually met rigorous criteria like reducing energy, treating employees fairly, preserving the local culture, and so on. Meanwhile, the World Travel and Tourism Council, which is like a CEO forum for the travel industry, has gotten very vocal about climate action. They launched a net zero roadmap, encouraging travel companies to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2050 with interim targets. Now, 2050 might sound far off, and net zero might sound abstract, but seeing big hotel chains, airlines, and tour operators sign onto these pledges is a sign that sustainability is no longer just a tree-hugger concern. It's boardroom talk too. The pressure from consumers, regulators, and investors is making sure of that. Before we go too far, time for a reality check. The sheer scale of global tourism often outpaces these sustainability efforts. We were pushing 1.4 billion international tourist trips a year before the pandemic paused everything. That number is climbing back up and likely to keep growing long term. Mass tourism, huge numbers of people converging on the same popular destinations, brings a host of problems, one which we've posted about in our LinkedIn feed. Environmental ones, like pollution and habitat disturbance, but also social ones, like overcrowding, rising prices for locals, and cultural commodification. We call this over-tourism when it really gets out of hand. Think places like Venice, which before COVID would see giant cruise ships disgorging thousands of day trippers into streets already jammed with visitors. Or Machu Picchu, where foot traffic on the ancient trails got so heavy that authorities had to impose limits. Or popular national parks that have cars lined up for miles at the entrance during peak season. When tourism exceeds a location's capacity to sustain it, both the environment and the visitor experience degrade. It's a lose-lose situation. So, what's being done about it? Thankfully, more destinations are no longer in denial about over-tourism and unsustainable practices. They're actively seeking solutions. Some cities and sites are introducing visitor caps and reservation systems. For instance, Machu Picchu now requires advance permits and limits the number of people who can hike the Inca Trail or even enter the ruins each day. The Galapagos Islands strictly control how many tourists can land on each island at any given time, and visitors there must be accompanied by certified guides to ensure nobody's harassing the wildlife. The animals are famously unafraid of humans there, which is magical, but also means humans must be extra careful. In Southeast Asia, Thailand made headlines by closing the famous Maya Bay on Phi Phi Lay Island for several years to let its coral reef recover from the damage caused by too many tourists. Thanks, The Beach movie, for putting it on every backpacker's bucket list. They've since reopened Maya Bay, but now with strict rules. Only a limited number of visitors per day, no swimming in the bay, and boats must dock on the opposite side of the island to reduce pollution and disturbance. It's a dramatic example of hit the brakes, then implement controls. Similarly, Boracay Island in the Philippines was closed to tourists for cleanup in 2018 and has reopened with new regulations on waste and water treatment for hotels. Popular cities are also acting. Venice, for one, has banned those enormous cruise ships from entering its historic lagoon after an outcry about the damage to canals and the startling image of cruise behemoths towering over century-old buildings. Venice has also floated plans, no pun intended, to charge a small entrance fee for day trippers and implement a booking system for visitors to better manage crowds. It's been debated for years and delayed, but the very fact it's on the table reflects the urgency. Barcelona cracked down on unlicensed tourist apartments, like illegal Airbnbs, to control the volume of visitors and ease pressure on housing for locals. Amsterdam has been running campaigns to encourage behaviour change, telling rowdy party tourists to respect the city or stay home, and promoting visitation to lesser-known areas of the Netherlands to spread out the impact. And across Europe, many cities levy a tourist tax on hotel stays, just a few euros per night, that go into a fund for city maintenance or environmental projects. It's a way to have visitors contribute to the upkeep of the place they're enjoying. On a national level, some countries are trying a high-value, low-impact strategy. The poster child for this is Bhutan. For years, Bhutan has required international tourists, except those from neighbouring countries, to book through licensed operators and pay a hefty daily tariff that covers guided tours, lodging, meals, and fees. Recently, they revamped it into an outright sustainable development fee of $200 per person per day, on top of all other expenses. In return, you get to experience a pristine Himalayan kingdom that fiercely guards its culture and environment, and your money helps keep it that way. It's not cheap. In fact, it prices out a lot of travellers, which is deliberate to avoid mass tourism. But that's the trade-off they've chosen. Bhutan is an extreme model perhaps, not easily replicated everywhere, but many destinations are inching that direction of let's focus on quality over quantity. New Zealand, for example, started charging an international visitor conservation and tourism levy for most foreign arrivals, which funds conservation and infrastructure. They've also been rethinking their marketing to target travellers who genuinely care about nature and culture and will tread lightly, as opposed to just seeking to maximise visitor numbers. It's almost like a courting process. Dear tourists, if you share our values, please come. If not, maybe reconsider. This is a notable pivot from the days when tourism boards mainly cared about breaking arrival number records each year. Beyond managing visitor numbers, the tourism industry is tackling sustainability issues in other concrete ways too. Hotels are reducing single-use plastics, like those tiny shampoo bottles. Many have switched to bulk dispensers, not as fancy perhaps, but much less wasteful. They're also asking guests to reuse towels and linens for a few days, which, while it might partly be cost-driven, does significantly cut water and energy usage for laundry. Some hotels have gone further, eliminating plastic water bottles entirely, providing filtered water stations and giving guests reusable bottles. Energy efficiency is a big focus. Motion sensor lights, keycard master switches that turn off power when you leave the room, solar panels on rooftops, geothermal heating, cooling systems, you name it. A particularly cool example. In the Caribbean, there's a resort that installed a seawater air conditioning system, pumping cold, deep seawater to help cool the buildings instead of energy-intensive AC chillers. That's innovation born of necessity in a hot climate on a remote island. And waste. Oh, crikey. Waste is a huge issue in tourism, especially in regions without robust municipal systems. Resorts on small islands often must become self-sufficient in waste management. A shining example is the SYNI resorts in the Maldives. They set up their own waste to wealth program that recycles or composts something like 90% of their waste on the island, turning glass bottles into art and construction material, composting food scraps for the gardens, etc. They even fund a small recycling centre that also serves neighbouring local islands, not just the resort, because otherwise, where would all the trash go on a tiny speck of land? Many hotels are also starting on-site organic gardens to supply their kitchens, cutting down on food transport emissions and ensuring fresher meals for guests. Farm to table is not just trendy, it's often more sustainable. Now, as we promised, let's shine a spotlight on some environmentally friendly resorts and accommodations around the world, essentially the all-stars of sustainable tourism. These are places that really go above and beyond to minimise their ecological footprint and often help improve the environment around them. And importantly, we'll look at both the high-end luxury eco-resorts and some more budget-friendly sustainable stays to bust the myth that ecotourism is only for wealthy globetrotters with cash to burn. First, picture a tropical island paradise. White sands, turquoise lagoon, villas over the water. Got it. Now, make it sustainable. You might be imagining something like Soneva Fushi in the Maldives. This resort is often cited as a pioneer in luxury sustainability. They've been carbon neutral since 2012, which is no small feat given everything runs on diesel in those remote islands by default. Soneva invested in solar power and battery storage. Currently, a big chunk of their energy is solar, and they're aiming for even more. They have a strict no plastics policy, no plastic straws, bottles, or bags on the property. Instead, they bottle their own filtered water in glass bottles. They also tackle waste head-on. That waste to wealth centre I mentioned earlier is at Soneva Fushi. They recycle glass by turning it into artwork. They have a glass-blowing studio on site. How cool is that? Compost organic waste, and even use food waste in a worm farm to produce rich soil for their gardens. The resort charges a small 2% environmental levy on stays, and that money goes into projects like forest restoration and community initiatives around the region. They even helped neighbouring islands improve waste management through an initiative called Soneva Namuna, aiming to make the whole atoll a plastic-free model. So, guests at Soneva get the luxury, gorgeous villas, fine dining, but can also feel good that the resort is a leader in sustainability. It shows that luxury and eco-consciousness can go hand in hand, at least for those willing to invest in it. Now, sustainability isn't only happening on idyllic islands. Let's head to the rainforest. Lapa Rios Lodge in Costa Rica, an iconic eco-lodge often mentioned among the world's best. It's set in a private reserve on the Osa Peninsula, which is a super biodiverse region. Think monkeys, macaws, pumas, oh my. Lapa Rios protected 1,000 acres of rainforest from logging by establishing the lodge there decades ago. They built with local materials, on stilts and with thatched roofs, blending into the jungle. Electricity use is minimal. They catch cooling ocean breezes instead of having air conditioning, and they've installed solar panels as well. They also employ almost entirely local staff from nearby villages and invest heavily in the community, funding a local school, for instance. Guests at Lapa Rios wake up to howler monkeys and spend days hiking with naturalist guides, learning about the forest. It's not a 5-star hotel in the traditional sense. No TVs, no AC, you might find a tree frog in your open-air shower. But it's a 5-star experience in terms of authenticity and environmental integrity. And it's not cheap either. It's a splurge for a lot of eco-tourists. But significantly, the money you spend there goes into conservation and local development. Costa Rica has dozens of such eco-lodges, and collectively they've played a big part in the country's renowned conservation success. A quarter of Costa Rica is protected territory. Let's look at a smaller scale example with a huge impact. Chumbe Island Coral Park in Zanzibar, Tanzania. I love this one because it's proof that even a tiny operation can do great things. Chumbe is a little island off the coast of Zanzibar that was turned into a marine protected area by a small NGO. They created a few eco-bungalows, only 7 to keep the footprint small, for tourists. These bungalows are simple but ingenious, built with local materials, featuring solar panels for electricity, rainwater catchment for water, composting toilets. Yes, the kind that use no flush and turn waste into compost via aerobic processes. Completely odourless and environmentally friendly. There's no air conditioning, obviously. The design of the rooms allows natural airflow, and they have open-air bathrooms where you can shower under the sky. So what's the allure? Well, step outside and you're basically in a tropical paradise where you're the only visitors. The coral reef around Chumbe is one of the healthiest in the region because it's fully protected, no fishing allowed. Guests get to snorkel in a vibrant reef that's like a giant aquarium, teeming with life, and because only a handful of people are there at any time, it never gets crowded or overused. The revenue from the lodge funds the management of the marine park and an education program for local school children to come learn about marine ecology on the island. Chumbe Island Coral Park is repeatedly recognised as one of the purest examples of ecotourism. It's not luxurious in a marble bathroom sense, but it's rich in experience and purpose, and it demonstrates how tourism can finance conservation directly. Now, I promised we'd also mention sustainable tourism is not just for luxury resorts. Indeed, there's a growing number of budget-friendly eco-stays and hostels that cater to backpackers and budget travellers who want to minimise their impact. For instance, some youth hostels around the world have adopted green practices. I came across a list recently of eco-friendly hostels where you can sleep for under $25 a night while still patting yourself on the back for making a responsible choice. One example from that list is Ekamama Hostel in Amsterdam. It's a chic little hostel that was built with upcycled materials, uses natural stone for heating, which is energy efficient, has a water-saving system, and, of course, recycles diligently. They even have a teepee set up in the common area, a quirky design choice to encourage community and conversation. Social sustainability meet bohemian decor. Another example, there are hostels and guest houses that run on solar power in sunny places, or that have their own organic gardens. In Chiang Mai, Thailand, there's a hostel that does urban gardening and has a zero plastic policy while charging only a few bucks for a dorm bed. Many of these budget places might not market themselves loudly as eco, but they inherently tread lightly. Smaller buildings, local staff, simple amenities that don't waste resources, etc. It's often the mega resorts with buffets and daily linen changes and aircon blasting that have huge footprints, whereas a tiny guest house with fans and cold water showers, a backpacker staple, is by default more eco-friendly. Of course, the ideal is to have even the larger, mid-range hotels improve too, and they are. It's easier than ever now to find an affordable hotel that has, say, a Green Key certification, a common eco-label, meaning they've met basic sustainability benchmarks. So, eco-travel is not limited to those with deep pockets. If you're a student travelling on the cheap, you can still make sustainable choices. Stay in a hostel that cares about its impact. Eat at local markets instead of international chains. Use public transportation or simply walk or bike around a city. In fact, those choices often save you money, proving that sustainable travel isn't synonymous with expensive travel. This brings us to the question, is environmental tourism being marketed and sold as a luxury good? It might seem that way when you see high-end eco-resorts dominating magazine spreads, or safari lodges costing thousands per night under the banner of conservation tourism. There's a trend where luxury and sustainability are marrying up, which in many ways is great because it means the luxury sector is taking sustainability seriously, and wealthy travellers, who generally have the biggest footprints, are at least trying to mitigate that. But it does risk creating an impression that green travel is a premium product, a fancy add-on for those who can afford it, rather than the new normal for everyone. We must push back against the idea that sustainable tourism is elitist. The important takeaway is that sustainable tourism cannot be a luxury niche if we want to truly address the environmental challenges of travel. It's got to go mainstream. So, what more can we, as travellers and listeners committed to environmental causes, do? We can support tourism businesses that are doing the right thing. We can be respectful travellers, follow the leave no trace principles, respect local cultures and rules, maybe even throw in a bit of volunteer work or at least thoughtful donations to conservation when we travel. We can spread the word, talk about the awesome eco-lodge you stayed at or the community tour that changed your perspective, so more people know these options exist. The bottom line is, sustainable tourism is a journey, not a destination. The industry is on that journey, travellers are on that journey, and it's one heck of a ride. It's a worthy goal because travel is such a beautiful part of life. It opens minds, it can open hearts, and if we do it right, it can open doors for better conservation and understanding across cultures. Well, that's a wrap on our 27th GreenWave podcast episode. We're enjoying growing the pod with you, our loyal listeners. Thanks again for sharing your time with us. You can stream the pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Podchaser, Boomplay, and Player FM, so feel free to follow us and share with friends. We'd love if you would leave a 5-star review. If you have missed any of our LinkedIn posts or the GreenWave Gazette, you can always catch us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, Instagram, or visit synergy-international.net. We'll keep reflecting on the trends shaping sustainable finance and global policy. Until next time, keep riding the green wave of sustainability. Stay inspired and keep advocating for a healthier planet, one sustainable resort at a time.